Termites, what are we doing? It's night 94. Look, what are we drinking? Spicy lemonade. It's on the fly. It's a dry vodka with natural flavors. This is from Spokane, Washington. And I got this at the very last gig I did on Earth, pre-COVID, which was in Boise, Idaho. And I jokingly said, welcome to my last show ever. And now I'm a little concerned that might actually be the case. Why do I have sunglasses on? I know somebody's going, why do you have sunglasses on? Because it's holding my hair back, because my hair is freakishly out of control today. So this is my attempt to look, normal-ish. Yeah, that's it. So that's what we have here. Trying to rebook stuff. We're doing it. Everybody's guessing spring of 2021. I guess. Maybe that'll happen. Anyway, in the meantime, we're just going to read and have a nice time, termites. We're not going to let the outside world bother us. We're not going to watch too much news. There'll be an election in a little while, 30-something days. And we'll see how that goes. And other than that, I'm trying to watch sports and the ID channel. Murder calms me down, because I'm pretty sure it won't happen in my house. So then I feel safe and cozier, because I know that the murderers, let's hope, are somewhere else. Okay, we're back to Tanya. She's out and about on the road again. She did her Super Bowl gig. She had fun. I don't have to Google that. I'll have to go see the 1994 Super Bowl halftime show. I don't remember it. My next album, Fire to Fire, didn't do much, even though I felt it was good and solid. It was one of those times when an upheaval at the record label affect artists and their projects, unusually in an adverse way. When Jimmy Bowen was diagnosed with cancer that year, he resigned as president of the record label. Thankfully, since then, he's made a complete recovery. But at Capitol, by the time a new label head was in place, many records had been lost. That's just one of those things you get when you used to be in the record business. Well, you get used to in the record business. Well, maybe you never really get used to it, but you know it can happen. And when you consider the fact that somebody beat cancer, it seems pretty irrelevant anyway. I agree with that. The man EMI eventually named president and CEO of Capitol Nashville was none other than Scott Hendricks, who's engineered so many of my records, including the one I made in the Bahamas in 1987. Scott had gone on to become one of the most successful record producers in the country, but I was sure glad I treated him well back then, because as an engineer, here's a little lesson for anybody for whatever business you're in. Be careful whose toes you step on, because they may be attached to the feet you'll have to kiss. Okay, I never heard that. Be careful whose toes you step on, because they may be attached to the feet you have to kiss. You'll have to kiss. I've heard of be careful, something about a ladder, who you step on the ladder way up, because something about they'll be on a rung on the way down. I don't know. I usually tend to forget those things because I got the point of it. It's just be nice. But as I said earlier, executive changes at record labels are usually scary for an artist. This time was no exception, and it ultimately resulted in a producer change. I'd been with Jerry Crutchfield for 10 years, and the new regime believed a change was in order. So a new producer, Greg Brown, was chosen. It felt the same way it had all those years when I moved from the security I'd felt with Billy Sherrill. I felt like I was 15 years old and scared to death. It was the idea of change that scared me, not the idea of Greg Brown. He produced for Travis Tritt, and they'd certainly made great records. When I called Greg's office to set up a meeting, I was told he was out of town attending a Chris Ledoux concert. Who's that? Chris Ledoux? Country person I never heard of, I'm sure. In anticipation of Chris's upcoming sessions. Man, I thought, what a concept. A producer who actually goes out on the road and listens to his acts play live. That was really reassuring. And when we did meet, I was impressed how concentrated and focused Greg was. I love the fact that he didn't have a barn full of artists. I had time to think about the changes that were coming because I pulled back a little from the road. Well, I don't know how with the expenses of this new ranch. Holy shit. For most of 1995, I'd been telling my dad I wanted to take some time off. I tried to explain that I felt I was missing something. Never mind that I took Presley or Bo Grayson out on the tour with me whenever I could. I didn't know them the way I wanted to. I finally I had what I wanted, a place where my kids could roam freely, a place big enough to keep all the horses I wanted, and a place where my dog could run without getting hit by an 18-wheeler, and I was missing out on it. Well, you needed COVID right then. That had kept your ass right there. So I put my foot down. Good for her. That's something I'd never been sure I could do. From the time we started out, I'd always felt like I was herded there and herded to here, and my role was not to make any waves. But back when I was a kid, it was natural to look to Dad during interviews when I was stuck for an answer. I still look to him for answers. But this time I felt I had my own answers, and they gave me the strength to make some waves. Dad listened to me and pulled back on my bookings. If my dad was booking me right now, no. Well, if he was, I would only be working casinos so him and my mom could track me on the road. And then they could follow me in their, well, now they have an Acadia. They could follow me in their GMC Acadia from casino to casino. And then eat the free comps that I get, which I wouldn't eat them all anyway. Just when I was going to be home more, Shirley Porter moved to Dallas, and that about killed me. I hated the thought of her being so far away. Pat Burns, a guy she'd met a couple years ago, had become very important in her life, and she planned on marrying him. Please wait a year, squirrely bird, I asked you, and Royce thought you had a perfect marriage. I know Pat is great, but please stay engaged for one more year to make sure he's right for you. She agreed to do that for me. Well, who does that? In the meantime, I met a new guy. I hadn't been looking for a new relationship. I'd been so concerned with trying to look into the future and predict what might happen with Ben reading me that I was letting the present slip away. But at the time, I'd been listening to my housekeeper, Maydale, talk about the guy who owned the landscaping service working on my ranch. He's the best-looking guy I've ever seen, Maydale kept saying. I hadn't paid much attention till one afternoon when Jonathan Cummings came into the kitchen to talk about some money my dad owed him for landscaping. Well, I had to take a second look as if he was a bill collector, especially because it was Daddy, not me, who owed him money. I loved that. We got to talking, and the more I listened to him, the more I liked him. I thought, well, I've always been a gambler. Maybe I'd try one more time. Jonathan and I began dating, and the press made a big deal out of it, referring to him as the gardener or the yard boy. Never mind that he owned his own business, and I was one of many clients. As a matter of fact, I'd always preferred men who do some kind of manual labor, who enjoy hard physical work and aren't afraid of getting their hands dirty. Men like my dad. Kinda. He's making a lot of money off you doing a lot of work. Just saying. Of course, Jonathan quickly learned that dating me means living in a fishbowl. But he's a very positive-minded individual. He's very secure within himself, which I think is the true mark of a person's worth. But that still doesn't make going around with me easy. I try to fit in with everyone else where I go, and when people don't allow me to, I often wind up in trouble and in print. I'll tell you a fairly recent example. This is not a very important episode in my life, but it did make the wire service, so I think I should tell you what happened. All right. I love going to Cody, Wyoming. It's one of my favorite places on this earth, and it's an area I sometimes fantasize about settling down for good. The terrain is beautiful. The desert runs straight into the mountains, and the stark, wild-looking plateaus create a feeling you're looking at the Old West before the land was chewed up. I dream of someday selling this huge house I live in and moving myself and the kids to a little place in Cody. On one trip I made to the rodeo in Cody, the newspapers reported that a young lady had asked Jonathan to dance and that she and I got into a fight about it. Some papers suggested we both had black eyes, while others said she'd thrown a drink on me. The whole thing started when Jonathan and I were at one of the local bars, a place packed with the rodeo crowd and attracted tourists. Jonathan had just shaken his head when we eased our way inside the crowded room. He hadn't wanted to go out anyway. We've got perfectly good cabins, he argued, but I wanted to see what was going on. That's one trait of mine that will probably never change. I love to go where the lights are bright and the people are having fun. I like parties, even though they are neither as frequent nor as rowdy as in the past years. We'd found seats and a couple of drinks. I was just trying to hang out like everyone else when people approached me for an autograph. I told them to write down their address on a piece of paper, and I'd send them a fine signed photo when I got back to Nashville. Then I got interested in shooting a little pool. Everything's fine so far. I feel like everything's fine so far. And I got a table. I just started playing when some guys walked over and told me that wasn't the way they played pool in Australia. Well, that was thrown down the gauntlet. I told them to pick up their cues and put down their bets. One girl wouldn't stop pestering for an autograph. It was annoying since my pool game with the Aussies had turned serious. The girls soon figured out that I was with Jonathan, and she started hanging around where he was sitting. Pretty soon, she was not just hanging around, she was hanging on. That didn't slip by me. She finally walked over to me holding 2 shot glasses and said, "Hey, let's have a shot of tequila and make up." I thought about it for about a second. I said, "Hey, I don't even know you. There's nothing to make up for." I agree with Tanya. I'm on Tanya's team so far on this one. She wouldn't let it alone. So finally I took the tequila and knocked it back. She offered to go to another round, but I said no. If I was going to drink tequila, it would be with Jonathan and my pool playing pals. When it was my turn again, I started to head back to the pool table. She deliberately bumped into me, and I started to brush her aside. She shoved me. That naturally pissed me off, so I shoved her back. Right about then, some people pulled us away from each other, and Jonathan and I paid and left the club. That was the extent of the big fight. She didn't ask Jonathan to dance, nor did she throw a drink on me. It was a pretty simple situation. But the next day, there was a knock at the cabin door, and when I opened it, there stood the law. What? The policeman acted a little embarrassed, but he'd said the girl from the previous evening that I had reported that I hit her. All I could do was laugh and said, "No, I didn't, but if you bring her around, I will." That should have been the end of it. But then someone, maybe the girl, turned it into a media event. There I was in the papers again. That kind of thing happened so many times. Sometimes people use your name just to add a little excitement to their place. There was one club that told the folks that me and celebrities hung out there all the time. They mentioned the week's clientele, which included Tanya Tucker. I took my sunglasses off and said, "Are you sure Tanya Tucker was here last night?" She shook her head and said, "Well, I always worried that would happen when I started name dropping. That time I just laughed and said, 'Oh, hell, drop my name anytime if you think it'll help drag anybody in.'" I remember a time when I was around 18. Mother and Daddy were eating at a restaurant in Los Angeles, and the waiter at the table behind us was being very entertaining as he waxed on and on about how he'd been partying the night before with that wild woman, Tanya Tucker. When the young man came over to take our order, my dad decided to call him out on it. I held my head down so he couldn't see who I was. Dad said, "Son, I'd like you to repeat your story about that party to Tanya here. You're just fixing to take her order." Then I looked up at the guy, and he'd like to have died on the spot. Well, isn't that Daddy just having some good old fun? After Cody, Jonathan kept pointing out that I have a wonderful home and maybe I should appreciate it more and not head off to places where somebody wants to start something. In fact, most of the time Jonathan and I spent together has turned out to be at my ranch, and maybe Cody, Wyoming incident played into that decision. There's not a lot of hell raising that goes on out here, but I do still travel. Jonathan's mother, Sharon, invited me to join her on a trip to the Holy Land. That non-celebrity tour turned out to be the most wonderful experiences of my life. We met with a local church group led by a Hendersonville, Tennessee minister, Dr. Rodney Cloud. I'd wanted to visit the Holy Land for years, and my dad couldn't talk me out of going even though he tried. Yitzhak Rabin had just been killed. My dad was scared to death that fighting would break out in the Middle East, and I'd be caught up in it. Oh, I'm sure she could hold her own, even in the middle of that. So he gave me a million reasons why I shouldn't go. He kept telling me how hard it was going to be, reminding me that I'd been hauling all my luggage around the Middle East with no assistant. He said if I couldn't make it 2 weeks, I said if I couldn't make it 2 weeks hauling my own luggage, then I was in serious need of an attitude adjustment. Exactly. He reminded me about the 5:30 a.m. wake-up calls. They're taking bets in Vegas. You won't make it a week, he told me. Well, don't you bet against me, I warned him. I not only stuck to my guns about the trip, I took LaCosta and Patsy Cox, my Nickel Dreams co-writer, with me. I also wanted to take Mother, but she decided she wanted to stay home with her grandchildren. Every time we stopped by and visited another holy site, I wished again Mother had come along. One of these days, I want us all to go, the entire family. One reason I wanted to take this trip was to learn more about the Bible. I've always thought I should know more about the time when Jesus lived in the land where he walked and taught. I'd also hope that since I was trying to make some sense out of my life for this autobiography, maybe the Holy Land would be a place to do it. Sure. One of my friends asked me if I was sure I wasn't just trying to one-up Glenn Campbell for being born again and using that as a climax in his book. Nah, I said, I'd just been feeling Vacation Bible School calling me back. We left on December 27th, and for the next 2 weeks traveled throughout Israel and Egypt. Despite my father's warnings, I was never afraid or had any feeling of danger during the trip. In talking to the other travelers, I learned that none of us had felt fear while we were there. I won't do a travelogue here, but I will tell you it's just one of the few things that amazed me. Jesus could be felt everywhere. We went to the Nazareth and visited the church where the angel told Mary she would give birth to the Son of God. In the church, I touched the water from the spring that had been running for thousands of years. We visited the River Jordan where Jesus was baptized, and I saved a little water in a small jar to bring back home. So right now, there's a little jar of water in Nashville from the Jordan River. The river's much smaller than I expected, but there's a majesty that can be only described as spiritual. At the Sea of Galilee, we saw an ancient fishing boat that very well could have been one that Peter cast his nets from. It was incredible to think that the Lord walked on the same water. To feel really the emotion of the places you see in the Holy Land, I believe sometimes you have to get away from the group and sit alone. I tried to do that at many of those stops. All right. We're so close, termites. One more night, and we will have done it. It's crazy. Isn't it crazy we've read this whole book? And I still have to mail these out to the winners. I will when I'm done, I promise. I'll go back and find out all that. And we're going to go to Loretta Lynn next. Not the coal miner daughter one. Oh, no. The one after that. It's even crazier. What else, termites? Sorry, I keep coughing. I don't have COVID. I would suggest you watch The Vow. It's on, I think it's HBO Max. Yeah. It's about a cult in Albany, New York, and the leader in that cult is named Keith, which is why I wouldn't join. Not that I don't love the name Keith. I have plenty of friends named Keith, but I'm just now not giving up all my worldly possessions. Now, if it was Bhagwan or Jesus or Buddha, I'm like, well, maybe. Not Keith. Anyway, go watch The Vow. Get your sheet, pull it up. It's perfect fall sleeping weather. You have a little porch swing? I do. I had a guy make one. You can sleep out there too. It's great. Perfect time. About 70 at nighttime. Pull that sheet up. When we're done with this book, there's going to be a message from the Grand Termite as a reward for making it this far. It's already been filmed. I'm saving it, though, until I'm done, as a tide over to the next book. All right, pull your sheet up. I don't care if you're a 2 times or a 3 times T-shirt termite. You're a worthy termite. Everybody's gained a little weight. Don't feel bad about that. Some people drank too much. Some people smoked too many cigs. It's okay. When this is over, we'll all get back on track. What if it's not? Then what? Who knows? All right, termites. You're worthy. You're good termites. You're adorable termites. And that's it. Night-night, termites.